Hi everyone and good morning. We are today in an ancient city called Maresha, which is in the lower Judean hills. So what does it mean? Jerusalem is up on the Judean mountains, which is a mountain ridge on the left hand side, but we don't see it now. Soon we'll be up on a hill and we'll see it. And this area, which are the lower hills at an altitude of around 400 meters here above sea level, about 1,200 feet, are this mid-range area between the Judean mountains on the left-hand side and the beach plateau, which is on my right. And this area was very, very important in biblical times. It's famous mainly because this was where most of the clashes between the people of Israel, especially the tribe of Judah that was up on the mountain ridge, met the Philistine army, which were on the beach plateau. So not far from here, for example, is the Elah Valley, where the Battle of David and Goliath took place. And when the Philistines take the Ark of the Covenant, they take it to a few cities, which are all of them not far from here on the beach plateau. But today we're in Maresha, and we're now in the center of a very ancient city. A city that was already flourishing in the first temple period and later on in the second temple period as well. And today we don't see any houses here. When you look around, you see that it's quite empty, right? And the reason for that is that the rocks that are in this area, unlike in Jerusalem where it's very solid limestone, here it's chalk. And chalk is not very durable. And because of that reason, the rain slowly simply washed all the houses away. They got eroded, melted by the rain, broken apart, and today there is not much left of the actual buildings. What we can find here a lot are caves, and we're now getting into one of them. And you'll see that the reason that there are so many caves here is basically quarries. To build all the houses of the cities that were here, they needed a lot of rocks. So they got underground. Why would you make a quarry underground and not overground? It's much more difficult. And for that, there are two reasons. The main one is that the rock here is formed in such a way that the upper 10 feet, give or take, is a very solid stone called nari. And when you go underneath those first 10 feet, give or take, you get to the much softer rock. So you want to do that. You want to make a hole, go underneath the very solid rock, and then when you get to the softer rock, easy to carve, this is what you find. Look at this cave, it's huge. And then you're working here, and slowly you carve the bricks and you take them out and you build houses out of it. The second reason that they did it was that if you've ever been to Israel during the summertime, you know how hot it gets here. And it was much easier to work underneath the ground than to work here. And it was much easier to work underneath the ground in the hot summer days than to work up there. And this is a cave that is really, really impressive. It's huge. I mean, look at it. I don't know how much you can see with the light conditions, but it's very, very impressive. And I guess you already noticed that there are many of these holes up on the walls. What were these holes for? And this is something that archaeologists were wondering about for quite a while. And for some time, there were many that believed that this was a burial cave and that every one of these holes was meant for the ashes of a person. But then they checked it and they found that it's too small. If you wonder why they checked here in Judea about burial in ashes, while Jews bury, they never cremate. Well, for a long time there were also Edomite, Sedonite, and Greeks here. And they might have done it. But anyhow, they found that this couldn't be. And eventually they found that this cave was for pigeon growing. Each one of these holes, and you can still see the pigeons that managed their way in, fly around here. The reason to grow pigeons here was, first of all, for meat, for eggs, for maybe sacrificing in the temple. That was one of the legit sacrifices that were offered. But the main reason was poop. I kid you not. And if you look here, you will see that on the ground there is like a hole in the ground. And probably the people working here were swiping the poop into those holes and taking it for the fields around the city as compost to make the growth better. So we didn't invent helping the plants and how to do it. And this is the way out. And what I'm looking for on the right is a mark that was done here in the Byzantine time by a priest, a monk that was living here in the cave. And there it is. You can see here on the wall on the right hand side a cross. Had letters for Jesus Christos, Jesus Christ, and the Alpha and the Omega, if I get it right. Jesus said, I'm the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. Right there. There is another cross. During the Byzantine era, there were many monks, solitary monks, that looked for these ancient caves, and they came to live in it. In that stage, the city of Maresha was already destroyed, and the new one, called Bet Govrin, which is right around the corner, took its place in this region. It's a beautiful time now. Everything is blossoming. It's wonderful. Look at that. Beautiful flowers. Where I live up on the Judean mountains, it's cooler. That's why in our place we don't see it yet. It's coming. Probably in 2-3 weeks it will be as it is here. So all the valleys that are around us are very, very good soil for agriculture. And they knew it back in biblical times. And the agriculture here flourished. And that's also one of the reasons that there were so many battles about this place, that the Philistines wanted it so badly because it's great soil. Back then there were nations of farmers and fishermen, so that's how the battle started. The main industry here, though, was about the olive oil. And today we know olive oil, we love olive oil, we love it for food. Back then, it was the most accessible oil in the region. And other than using oil for food, the main purpose of it was for light, for lamps. And we are not far from Egypt, which was a huge empire back then, and they needed a lot of oil to burn all this, to light all these lamps. In Egypt, it's difficult to grow olive trees. It's more difficult to produce oils. That's why the main income of the people in this region was by making and selling the olive oil and shipping it to Egypt. More flowers. We will be walking carefully not to harm it. In Israel there are very, very strict laws of preservation, and everyone knows that some flowers, including these lakafot, you cannot take them. They are protected by law. So, because of all these caves in this region, those caves that were originally quarries for rocks, this area is known as the 1,000 Caves land. On every hill that you see around here, there was probably a Jewish village in older days. So you don't see the buildings, they got destroyed, but you can always find the caves, and they're really all over the area, all over the region. Later on, in the times of the Bar Kokhba revolt from 132 to 135, the rebels of Bar Kokhba that were fighting against the Romans, they saw the potential of these caves, they got in them, and from those older caves they started digging much smaller caves. Much smaller caves that reminds a little bit the idea of what the Viet Cong did in Vietnam. Caves so small, well disguised. The idea was also that the caves were very narrow, so full equipped Roman soldier couldn't crawl through it. And they created here an amazing system of guerrilla warfare from those caves. And Roman units that were here in those years were walking quietly somewhere when all of a sudden those fighters of Bar Kokhba were attacking them without them seeing them before, anticipating it, and it worked really well. From the writings of those days we see that a whole Roman legion disappears from the writing, and we assume that it was simply destroyed in those battles. But eventually the Romans found about it, they understood the system of the caves, they figured a way to find them, and they started throwing inside burning torches. The people that were inside were either choked or they had to come out. And this war was lost. At the end of the war, Hadrian decided that he wants to disconnect the Jewish connection to this land, and then he changed the name of this land in the Roman Empire from Provincia Judea to Provincia Palestina, which he named after the biblical Philistines. At that stage, they weren't around anymore. So we are getting into a pretty small cave, one of the smallest here in Maresha. And this is a cave that is known for a bath. Yeah, this is a bath. And someone was right there. Someone was sitting here, enjoying life. Maybe putting a candle nearby. Some nice atmosphere. I love it that you can still see in the walls the marks of the carvings, which were done 2,000 years ago. It's amazing. And we are moving to the next cave. And we are now going to move into a cave that was, as the other caves here, originally made as a quarry, and later on became an olive oil press. Ooh. Lots of stairs. It's nice to come in the middle of the week when it's relatively quiet. In the weekend it looks very different. So, how do you make olive oil? So the first thing that you need is to crush the olives into a mush. And you do it here. This rock is sitting in a small canal at the base of it, and there is a wood connected to it, and this wood is connected to either a person or a donkey, and then the donkey is walking around, and simply that rock is spinning, turning, driving on the olives that are being put at the bottom of it. And it's crushing it until you get a mush. What is interesting about this rock is that it's different from rocks that you see around Israel, which are usually flat and not rounded in this system. And it is believed that this rock was, according to the Italian design, IBs made for the Italian type of olives, while here it was different. It's important because you don't want to crush the seed. The seed brings bitterness, and each region has to have a certain weight, a certain rock, a certain design in order to get the best out of the local olives that are there. Once you get the mash and it's ready, you take it over here to this machine device, and what you see right there are baskets, and I'll allow myself to come closer so that you can see it. Right, what you can see there are baskets, and in each basket over it you put a part of this mash that you made, then you put another basket, then you put more mash, another basket, more mash, another basket, more of the olive mash, and then you want to press it. How do you press it? And this is, by the way, until now, it's the same way it's still done today. There is also modern machinery, but the basis is this. How do you make the weight on it? So you put a very heavy piece of wood, very strong, this one, which in Hebrew, by the way, it's called bad, and this is why an olive oil press in Hebrew is called bet bad, the house of the bad, the place of the bad, of this big piece of wood. And then you want more weight and more weight to come on it. So down here you can see those big rocks with holes that they connected with ropes to the wood itself. And here they could turn it and pull it higher and higher. And in this way, more and more weight would come on the baskets and squeeze out the liquid. And the liquid would come into this little pool, bath-like, that is down here underneath us. And that liquid was both olive oil and water. Now this water is not good for you. In Arabic they call it akar. Akar means that you cannot have kids, to say it's very unhealthy. So then you leave it alone, you let it stand for some time until the oil floats on the top of the liquid and the water goes to the bottom, and then you can very carefully with a cup of some kind take it out and store the olive oil separately, and that's the end of the process. Then you ship it to Egypt and you sell it there. They had a really nice decoration, you can see there on the wall in front of me. They wanted to have their bet bad really, really nice. Well done for them. So here is a crushing mill. This was a very large bet bad. You can see here more space for work, maybe storage, and over here you can see a water hole. Many of the caves were eventually sealed. They needed to put something on the wall to store the water inside, and they could pour water in it. And if you look right down here where my finger is pointing, you see those little canals here, those little, like someone carved it. And these were made by the ropes. So people would throw a bucket with a rope down there to pull water up, and pulling it up, and then the rope simply carved its way through the rock, which again is very soft. Because there are so many caves around, there are many openings that you cannot always see. For example, all those bushes that are here, maybe there are openings underneath them, and there were cases in the past in which people didn't know, and they went hiking and boom, they fell into a hole. There were a few cases in which people died. So it's true all around Israel, but here in this region especially, If you ever go hiking here, you stay on the path. You don't walk where, you don't know what you're going to find. These trees that are here are very famous. They're called carob. The carob, the fruit of this tree, you can eat it. Now it's not really the season that they're ready. They just start growing, so in a few months they will be edible. Maybe we'll find one of the older ones from last year. There are so many people here, so everyone eats everything. The interesting thing with the carob is that its seeds always weigh the same, and in older times they used the seed of the carob to weight precious metals, and the name given to it was carat. Carob became carat, and this is how we measure gold today, right? The quality of gold. So it's named after this Israeli tree. Here there is a restored villa from those days, so it wouldn't survive. It's something that the people of the National Reserve Authority rebuilt. Underneath it there is a very impressive cave system, but unfortunately today there is a sign saying that we cannot enter because of danger of collapse, so we won't. During the winter time, there are all sorts of things that are changing, especially in those older caves. By the way, the prophet Micha was probably from here. Some believe that King Herod himself might have also been from here, because in his days this was an Edomite and Sedonite town. Many Edomites that were in the region of Be'er Sheva area came up here and took over many of the towns that were destroyed when the Babylonians came in. And then by the time Koresh allowed the Jews to come back to Jerusalem and to Judea, these areas were already taken. And we are entering into another system. of caves that were under the houses here. Woo! This is a lot of fun. Oh my God. Look at that. It's unbelievable. Here also you can see holes in the walls for the pigeon growing. And there's a staircase that goes up there. And we're now moving to another cave through this little hole. And another one. So basically we move to the cave of another house. Look at these stairs, they just fell. They were connected to the wall, and with time the staircase just broke apart. It's amazing. And we are moving to another cave, but look at the pigeon up there, sitting there on the side of the stone. Hi there. And another one. We just crossed from one cave to the next. Now I see why they call it the maze cave. Boo ha ha. What do we have here? A water hole, and not just a water hole that is still functioning. There is a system of canals from 2,000 years ago that is still operating today in the winter time. Very nice. And we are moving to the next cave. Another one. And guess what? Another cave, which is the one we've just seen from the bottom with the water. Now we can see it from the top. small one on the right here with a tiny little door. Very cute. I'm born again. This was nice. You know that many of the caves here were excavated by tourists that are coming over. There is an attraction here called Dig for a Day, and if you ever wanted to experience an archaeological excavation yourselves, and then you come here, you learn a bit about archaeology, the history of the place, how to excavate, and then you go into one of those caves and you dig in the earth. We didn't see a cave that is not excavated, but what happened was that many of the older caves here became dumpsters, so people just threw in it whatever they had, their old plate, their lunch, and sometime a piece of jewelry fell in there, and toys, everything. And this is an amazing way to learn about their life, what they ate, how they ate, what they wore, the jewelry that they used. You can learn so much from it. And it's going on for many years. And you see those coverings over there. These are the caves in which it's taking place, some of them. And it's really, really a lot of fun. And you learn a lot by doing it. So next time you come to Israel, go for it. It's nice that they planted here olive trees, because this is exactly the agriculture that was here back then. So you can get a sense or an idea about how it looked like back then as well. We are now entering maybe the most decorated cave in Maresha. There is another one that was nicely decorated, and it's a burial cave. Look at the beautiful entrance with the trees all around. I just love it. And this is a burial cave of the community of the Sedonites that were here. We actually know who was buried here, a guy named Apollopans, which was the head of the Sedonite community here in Maresha. And here are the burial halls. It was probably a family burial system from everyone, so everyone from his family were buried here. And when there were new people to be buried, they took the old ones to another place and put the new ones instead. And look at those beautiful decorations, different animals from the region. These are not the original paintings. The original one, unfortunately, didn't survive. So they took very good photography of it before it got destroyed, and that's how they could recreate it later on. It's a little sad to see that many of the animals that you see here, not all of them, but some of them were living in Israel, and today you can't find them anymore. The Sedonites have a very long relationship with the Jewish people. The most famous example is, of course, when Solomon builds the first temple, and Hiram, the king of Tyre and Sidon, helps him, and he's the one that is standing here the huge cedar trees, cedar wood, from which the first temple will be built. From here, I will continue to the bell caves of Bet Govrin, which are gorgeous, very, very beautiful. That will be the next video.